And the reason I'm doing this is it's an update. We talked about this several months ago, and there has been some updates and the technical information that they've gathered, and they went through and crunched the numbers on it and things like that. And that's what they were saying in this article when they closed it down, that they wanted to do was now go in, use their supercomputers to really analyze the data that they got. Now, also, they're saying that they shut it down to basically double the voltage. It was running with both beams up to about 7 teravolts. Now they want to run 7 per beam. It'll put it about 14. Now, but I think they tried to turn this thing on in 2013 and crank it up, and the magnets burned out. The energy almost became out of control, and there was a lot of strange reports in this area when this thing happened. There were people that were reporting sightings of what they thought were demons and things. Police were being called out, and then the magnets on the big particle accelerators burned out. So they're replacing them with new ones now, again, to double the voltage. And what this is I think it's almost 17 miles underground, a large tunnel deep beneath the Earth's surface. There's 2 rings there, a small one and a large one. And the small one gets the particles accelerated, and they go into the large accelerator tube in opposite directions as they collide. Data is fed up from that large tube underground and collected at about 4 locations here. They've also now set up computers in Italy and in Turkey, making almost a perfect triangle. And they, believe it or not, this data is sent underground through just pure power, much like Tesla talked about. But they're saying that it's going to be cranked back up soon in 2015. Some are saying earlier, some are saying they're already trying. But here in the article, it says European Physics Lab, CERN, has announced that its Large Hadron Collider, LHC, has been turned off until 2015 so that vital maintenance and repair can be carried out. The shutdown had been planned as part of the LLC's operation, having been running for 3 years. When it comes back on again in 2015, it will run at higher speeds. In the past 3 years, the experiments at CERN have generated huge amounts of data, about 100 petabytes, according to the organization, and have led to potentially groundbreaking discoveries, including a particle that appears to be the long-sought Higgs boson. Some call it the God particle. It's important to pay attention to this because this was 2013. Now they've had time to crunch those numbers. Like I said, I'm going to read some of that. But let's finish this. It says the data generated by experiments hunting for the Higgs are still being analyzed. The organization, which receives funding from governments across Europe, said it was pleased with its first years of operation. We have every reason to be satisfied with the LLC's first 3 years. The machine, the experiments, the computing facilities, and all infrastructures behaved brilliantly. And we have a major scientific discovery in our pocket, said CERN Director General Rolf Auer. Now, if they blew the bottom out of the earth, they'd tell you it was a wonderful thing. It's as long as they can keep getting billions in funding from around the world. But it says the work on the LLC and its components parts are vital next stage in the machine's evolution and to boost its running speed. Again, they're going to try to double that. But guys, this goes to the bottomless pit and the key to unlocking it. Now, with the Pope and what he started with the spread of the locust army through the religious world by basically bringing in the preachers from every form of government, and we saw the demonic witchcraft ceremonies that they had. Now, this is the second wave. This will release. This will unlock the bottomless pit, and that's what they're trying to do. Now, look at one of their models. Notice also their logo. It's very easy to see the 3 6s in it. It's basically the 2 rings that are underground, except one's much smaller than the other. And a lot of people tie that in with that particular number. But, guys, this model represents the circle underground and the data collection points around it, the buildings that are high above ground. But I want to read some of the data crunching, and we're going to have to kind of go between the lines on this. But again, what we're talking about is in the book of Enoch and in the Emerald Tablets that we went over, guys, is the fact that these angels, these fallen angels of the book of Enoch, their spirits were locked underground. They weren't destroyed. They were locked underground. And it was, to me, it's not a physical, just a physical underground. It also has to do with dimensions. The type dimension that I'm talking about is the way that Christ could walk through a wall, because he was going between the physical and the spiritual bodies. And that's what these guys are trying to do here, is to create that crack. As we look at some of these images, you're seeing One thing is the statue of Shiva. You saw it as they turned this thing off in the flood from the video this morning. You see that? But Shiva means to first transform and then destroy. This is the map on the Franco-Italian border. Look at the size of that outer large collider ring and then the smaller one. You see that? It comes down, it starts the acceleration in the small rings fed out in both directions that go into this larger blue ring and then collide. And then the gray sections you see going up is where all this data is collected and fed up into these supercomputers. Guys, this is where the World Wide Web was developed, at CERN, this particular location. It was developed to collect this data. Now they're tying computers around the world in order to handle this next crank up. But guys, again, I want to read some of the data and let's look between the lines at what they're doing. June 19th, 2014. Guys, this is part 2 of the CERN video. If you haven't seen part 1, this one may not make a lot of sense, so check it out. But what they're talking about is they closed CERN down, or either it burned itself out in 2013 and they're getting ready to start it back up with double the power. But what they've done in the meantime this year is send all the data that was collected during 2013 and the couple of years before that to supercomputers around the world, different colleges, MIT, universities in Europe, everywhere, University of Copenhagen, and let the different scientists start crunching this data. Now, they're going to word it, and I'm going to read between the lines, so that you, unless you know what they're talking about, it's not going to make a lot of sense, but we're going to get through that. It says the neutrino mutation would not be possible if it weren't for the particle's minuscule mass, very small, because each of the 3 known mass states, listen, we're talking about dimensions here, each of the 3 known mass states is so small and its associated quantum wavelength is so long, the waves corresponding to each state can remain largely in sync. Once they get started, guys, that's important, with only small offsets over cosmic distances. This allows neutrinos to flicker between different flavors. There's that word, flavor. Just transcribe it to dimension. This allows neutrinos to flicker between different dimensions in an ephemeral state of multiplicity. This ephemeral, guys, means fast, in an instant. If their masses were larger and their wavelengths shorter, the waves would quickly become so out of phase that this knife-edge balance between different... Why are they using flavors? Is this ice cream, guys? Couldn't you find something better? This knife-edge balance between different dimensions would collapse, forcing the neutrinos into one dimension or the other. The different dimensions would separate from each other. It says this would have a heavy binary behavior. The fact that neutrinos don't, thanks to their puny mass states, makes sense according to the rules of quantum mechanics, but it is still mind-bending. Says neutrino researcher Jason Koskinen of the University of Copenhagen. He says, I still haven't wrapped my head around this. There's just one snag. Neutrinos weren't supposed to have any mass at all. That's why they're having to rewrite some of these books of physics. You know, man just thinks they know what God knows. And that's what the problem with the fallen angels. We built our standard model around the idea that neutrinos are massless, says Janet Conrad of MIT. The fact that they have mass, however small, is a big problem. That's what they found out. That's what they were looking for. The standard model is physics' best idea of how particles and forces interact. A spectacularly strong edifice whose construction was completed in 2012 with the discovery of its latest missing particle, the Higgs boson, also called the God particle. Neutrino oscillation is the only confirmed physics right now that can be done outside the standard model. Neutrinos has broke that level, especially with this Higgs boson. It's broke the barrier between the dimensions when they power this thing up. The reason that neutrino mass is so tricky has to do with how any particle gets its mass, from the ether to the mass. Other elementary particles with mass come in 2 mirror versions, one left and one right-handed, that correspond to the direction of their spin. Now listen, each version can interact with a different force of nature, and both hands seem to be required to give particle mass. You got to have both sides working together, thanks to their interaction with an invisible quantum ether. There it is, that suffuses all of space. The Higgs field, whose signature particle is the Higgs boson, again, God particle. Listen, the Higgs field acts a bit like a mirror, showing both sides of that dimension that Christ traveled through. turning a particle with one spin into its mirror opposite. The idea is that every once in a while, a left-handed particle will hit the Higgs field and convert to a right-handed particle from one side to the other. The net effect is that it looks like a particle with mass. That means, guys, it has come to this dimension, into the physical. These mass states behave not as simple dumbbells of differing weights, but as waves of different lengths. Because the waves do not line up with each other perfectly at different points, the height of one mass state will vary with respect to that of the other two. That means that sometimes the combination of mass states will resemble the recipe for an electron neutrino, while at other times it will look like that of a muon neutrino. As a result, neutrinos appear to oscillate among the three flavors as they travel. That word kills me. Let me read this. As a result, neutrinos appear to oscillate among the three dimensions as they travel. No other fundamental particle can do this. Only the neutrinos can change from one type to another. More than a quirk of nature, this ability to mutate on the fly as it travels and spins from one to the other, don't let this escape you. This ability to mutate on the fly points to some deep questions in physics and potentially some important answers. They think they found all the answers, and again, as usual, man will be proven to be a blight on this earth. Nuclear power, oil. Now this release from another dimension. It's a heads up, guys. What it's got to do with and why it's so important is that we're talking about, again, opening a gate that was locked, and the key was locked a long time ago. And Apollyon's about to give these guys the key to unlock this change between the ether into mass. Now, what would be so important about that is because it's the end times. And if you read Revelation, it will tell you that there was a war in heaven, and a third of God's stars, or his children, were deceived by Satan and followed him and were cast to the earth. And there was a battle, and Michael and his angels won it. That means his messengers, God's children, 2/3 fought against Satan. But that 1/3 fell where? To earth. Now, this blows away all the preconceived notions of a fly-away rapture doctrine, because there's a test coming. God did not want to destroy that third of his children. Pay attention. He put this earth age in place as a test to see, would you run away with Satan this time? Or would you stand and fight him like 2/3 of his children did the first time? Very important. So, if you know and if you understand what I'm saying, you know we're about to be tested. The only reason God created this physical earth now is to save his children, to give you a second chance in this age to stand against Satan. But Satan's preachers are teaching you to fly away and be raptured and hid so that you won't pass this test. Very important, guys. I'll get into it more in Jeremiah. Heads up, be safe. CERN Control Center. This is on the Franco-Swiss border in Europe. And the reason I'm doing this is it's an update. We talked about this several months ago, and there has been some updates and the technical information that they've gathered, and they went through and crunched the numbers on it and things like that. And that's what they were saying in this article when they closed it down, that they wanted to do was now go in, use their supercomputers to really analyze the data that they got. Now, also, they're saying that they shut it down to basically double the voltage. It was running with both beams up to about 7 teravolts. Now they want to run 7 per beam. It'll put it about 14. But I think they tried to turn this thing on in 2013 and crank it up. And the magnets burned out. The energy almost became out of control, and there was a lot of strange reports in this area when this thing happened. There were people that were reporting sightings of what they thought were demons and things. Police were being called out, and then the magnets on the big particle accelerators burned out. So they're replacing them with new ones now, again, to double the voltage. And what this is I think it's almost 17 miles underground, a large tunnel deep beneath the Earth's surface. There's 2 rings there, a small one and a large one. And the small one gets the particles accelerated, then they go into the large accelerator tube in opposite directions as they collide. Data is fed up from that large tube underground and collected at about 4 locations here. They've also now set up computers in Italy and in Turkey, making almost a perfect triangle. And they, believe it or not, this data is sent underground through just pure power, much like Tesla talked about. But they're saying that it's going to be cranked back up soon in 2015. Some are saying earlier, some are saying they're already trying. But here in the article, it says,